Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today. Yesterday, following a serious domestic incident and a vehicle pursuit, Cincinnati Police Department officers were involved in a shooting in Over-the-Rhine that resulted in the death of one man. We as a city take the loss of life extremely seriously in all circumstances, and particularly when our officers are in the line of duty. And I'm here with Police Chief Teresa Theetge, City Manager City Consultant to the Collaborative Iris Rowley, Councilmember Scotty Johnson, to discuss the incident and the process moving forward. First things first, I want to thank...
Now it's working.
First things first, I want to thank our incredible police department for their swift action to keep the surrounding area safe for innocent bystanders during a tense and difficult moment. Time and time again, our police officers are asked to demonstrate extraordinary bravery and judgment, and that's what we saw yesterday. I also want to thank our coroner and the health professionals for their excellent work. As with every officer-involved shooting, there will be an investigation into this incident with not only the CPD, but also the Citizen Complaint Authority, one of the pillars of our collaborative agreement. They will both be running parallel investigations. We are committed to a thorough process, and I have the utmost confidence that the CCA, our police department, and our city administration, along with our law enforcement professionals, will direct these investigations with transparency top of mind. Thank you, and I'll now invite City Manager Long to speak.
Good afternoon. I want to begin by extending my gratitude to CPD for keeping the many residents and visitors safe who were near this crime scene. Guns being drawn in front of two gyms of our city, Music Hall and Washington Park, is a terrifying moment, especially in the early evening hours of summer. Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry, it's a lot going on up here. Do you want me to start over again? Okay. Good afternoon. I want to begin by extending my gratitude to CPD for keeping the many residents and visitors safe who were near this crime scene. Guns being drawn in front of two gyms of our city, Music Hall and Washington Park, is a terrifying moment, especially in the early evening hours of summer, when there are kids playing and park goers enjoying the weather, and visitors attending concerts at Music Hall and Memorial Hall. I am very grateful, and I thank God that no bystanders were injured or otherwise caught up in this incident. And I want to commend our officers and Chief Theetge for containing the situation. And of course, I'm immensely thankful that there were no CPD injuries as well. Whenever there is an officer-involved shooting, our first reaction must always be a close and thorough review of the entire incident. That's a key component of the collaborative agreement, and that's something that I take very seriously as city manager. Our officers have lengthy job descriptions and enormous responsibility to keep us safe. There is never a more serious moment than when an officer considers using deadly force. When a person is shot and when a person loses their life, it is our duty in a democratic society to explain why. And that is exactly what my administration intends to do as we react to the incident last night. We should also take a moment to acknowledge the families and loved ones who are affected by these life-altering and life-ending circumstances. The loss of life is always serious. It is something that we must work tirelessly to prevent, and when we can't, we must acknowledge the humanity of every life lost. For me, as city manager, I want to again commend our officers for protecting the many bystanders who were at the scene. I consider CPD to be heroes with a very difficult responsibility to protect Cincinnatians in even the most challenging contexts. I also want to thank our residents and the media for their patience and attention as we continue to share details about the incident. Thank you, and now I'll turn things over to Chief Theetge.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for being here, taking the time to cover this incident for us. Before I get started into the facts of the incident, I want to take a moment to recognize the heroic efforts of the officers, every one of them on the scene last night, to the investigators that spent hours through the middle of the night investigating this. Kudos to each and every one of them for showing up every day for this city. To the family of the victim from yesterday's incident, we're releasing his name in a moment. My condolences to the family. They did lose a loved one, and I feel for them for that. I did have a moment to speak with them this morning and recap some of the facts with them and show them the video so they are aware that we're proceeding today. So on June 27th, 2024, at approximately 18:43 hours, a 911 caller reported a female had been stabbed multiple times by a male suspect in the 3300 block of Parkcrest Lane. That is on the west side of our city. Officers broadcast a detailed description of the suspect and the vehicle, which was last seen fleeing towards Glenway Avenue. The vehicle description was a Toyota Camry, blue in color, with Ohio license plate. This is the aerial shot of Parkcrest Lane, and we have a 911 call here for you.
Hello? Cincinnati 911, what is the address of your emergency?
3366 Parkcrest Lane.
And can you just repeat that for verification?
3366 Parkcrest Lane, Cincinnati, Ohio.
Thank you. Any apartment number?
There's a house on the corner, and this lady needs help right now. She jumped out of her car. A fella jumped out after her. He stabbed her about 10 times, and she's dying right now in my garage.
Okay, stand in line. I'm getting a plan.
All right, and I would be remiss if I didn't also acknowledge the unbelievable work by our call takers and dispatchers during this, because you'll see this was a very large-scale incident by the time it came to conclusion. So at approximately 19:03 hours, so 20 minutes later, District 3 officers located the suspect vehicle in the area of Warsaw and Enright in the Price Hill community. The officer observed the suspect covered in blood. He initiated a traffic stop, and the vehicle refused to stop. 2 minutes later, at approximately 19:05 hours, a traffic pursuit ensued. Several times during the traffic stop, the suspect pointed a handgun at our officers. The suspect led the officers inbound on Warsaw Avenue, and at approximately 19:12 hours, he stopped his vehicle at Elm and West 12th Street. You can see here, I'll point out, Washington Park. It was a beautiful night out last night. Plenty of people in attendance at the park. We had Memorial Hall, Music Hall, we had the opera. So this happened at approximately 19:15. The opera was scheduled to start at 19:30. So we had a lot of patrons arriving. I'm going to play a video here for you from one of our city cameras. You'll see this blue Toyota Camry stop in the middle of the intersection. Our suspect gets out of the car, and he has a firearm in his hand as he starts to walk northbound on Elm Street. This video is about 1.5 minutes long, but it's powerful. You can see him here, walking northbound. Some of the foliage on the tree is going to block some of the video for just a moment. There is no audio on these cameras. This camera is being maneuvered by an officer at our real-time crime center to keep an eye on the suspect. Right there approaching Memorial Hall. See people going inside up the steps of Memorial Hall. You see the officers displaying their patience and their tactical mindset. They're keeping a distance, being fully aware of what is going on around them. You can see the patrons trying to get into the music hall facility. Okay. The suspect we now know is Mr. Juan, J-U-A-N, Mack, M-A-C-K. He's a black male, 48 years old. He exited the vehicle holding his firearm, walked north on Elm. Officers followed. What you couldn't see on there, or couldn't hear, I should say, is they were constantly giving him commands. Stop, drop the gun, stop. He didn't comply with any of those commands. Considerable amount of foot traffic as he approached Music Hall. Officers cleared the nearby parking lot and the area in front of Music Hall. So as additional officers were responding, they were able to shut down the vehicular traffic to the north and the south of Music Hall to alleviate any potential danger to citizens. He stopped at Music Hall on Elm Street, stood at the corner holding the firearm in his right hand, and officers continued to tell him to drop the gun. Go ahead, Steve.
Can't give it the chair. 40 millimeter, 40 millimeter! I got body on body!
Units on the west, southbound.
Drop the gun! 40 millimeter, 40 millimeter! Drop the gun! Drop the gun! That's what we want! Drop the gun! Drop the gun! Drop the gun! Drop it no more!
You better not. I'm telling you.
Good now?
Stop. Don't do it no more. You better not do it no more.
Drop it, man. We ain't gonna do it no more. Just drop the gun.
I'm gonna pop
Come on, man. Be smart. Be smart.
Don't pop me no more. I'm gonna lay it down.
Lay it down. Lay it down! Lay it down!
That shit didn't hurt.
Just lay it down, man. Lay it down. Just lay it down. Put it down.
Stop. Stop. Stop.
Put the gun down.
Stop. I'm gonna pop back. I'm gonna pop back. I'm gonna pop back. Y'all better not. I'm gonna pop back.
Drop the gun.
Stop. Boy, I'm
So to give you an idea of chronologically what happened there, we had a supervisor with a 40 millimeter foam round. That's a non-lethal weapon that some of our supervisors have in their vehicles. The sergeant fired one round, hit Mr. Mack on the leg, had no effect. He fired a second round, missed Mr. Mack, while the officers, you can hear him continuing telling him, drop the gun, drop the gun. I don't know if you guys picked up on it or not, but some of Mr. Mack's responses to the officers were things such as, "I'm going to hell, I'm going to hell, I have a body on me." Keep in mind, he just practically murdered a woman, practically murdered her. He doesn't know whether she's dead or alive. He believes he's killed somebody. The other part here, I don't know if you, he kept telling the officers, "You drop your gun, then I'll drop mine." Not tactically sound. We're not going to do that. We're not going to back down. The other thing is he's telling the officers, if you fire that 40 millimeter, is what he's referencing, again, I'm going to start popping. I'm going to start popping. That's a threat to the officer's safety. So at the end of this, he refused to follow the officer's commands, in fact, raised his firearm, which caused the officers to use deadly force. We had one officer that fired 1 round from a patrol rifle, another officer that fired 3 rounds from his handgun, another officer that fired 1 round from his handgun, and another officer that fired 1 round from his handgun. And in total, the sergeant fired 3 40 millimeters. First one had effect, second one missed. The third one was fired simultaneously as the deadly force was being used. Do you have another one, Steve?
All on-duty squad, switch to 1B. All on-duty squad, switch to 1B immediately.
Drop the gun!
Stop! Just quiet! I'm running!
This is a video from outside Music Hall. And if you saw that green powder that kind of went into the air, that is from the 40 millimeter foam round. The Cincinnati officers called for the Cincinnati Fire Department to respond to the scene, and prior to their arrival, again, kudos to the officers, numerous officers started life-saving measures on Mr. Mack. Mr. Mack's weapon was a Ruger 40 caliber, loaded with 14 rounds, 13 in the magazine and 1 in the chamber. This is Mr. Mack.
Can you go back for a sec, Chief? Thank you.
Something that's going to be a little different for you guys here today. Due to Marcy's Law, we will not be releasing the officers' names. We will call them Officer 1, 2, 3, 4, and the sergeant. Officer 1 joined the police department November 17. His normal duty is he's assigned to the District 4 Violent Crime Squad. He was working some police visibility overtime last night when this incident occurred. Officer number 2, recent member of our department, is assigned to District 1. That's his normal tour of duty. Officer 3, 2016, also assigned to District 1. And then Officer number 4, 2016, and is currently assigned to our traffic unit. Part of this pursuit went right past our traffic section's office space up on Warsaw, and that's when this officer got involved. Went right past his office space. A couple things again before we take questions. Again, my condolences to the family. I can only imagine the heartbreak of losing a family member could be to anybody, no matter what the circumstances. But again, I want to praise our officers' heroic efforts. This had all the makings of a catastrophic incident. You saw the number of people that were out and about, and that was just what was in camera's view. There were many, many more people outside of the view. So the tactics, when I watch these videos, I not only look for, the officer's actions, I look at tactics, sound tactics on this, sound tactics. And again, kudos to our training staff. Cincinnati has the best trained officers in this country, and I think this demonstrates it. So kudos to our training staff for making them so tactically sound. All right, now I'll take questions.
Chief, how is the woman doing? Is she still in critical condition?
She is still in critical condition. The homicide investigators were able to interview her earlier today.
When they were moving, the man was moving and there were people up there. We didn't have any sound on any of the those overshots from the other security cameras. Was there any notice to the public? What were they telling them, or could they communicate with the public in that situation?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw in the one video that an officer was waving their hands, like, get back, get back. The music hall staff, I believe they were, saw what was approaching and were helping us with moving the crowd out of harm's way. But in listening to the officers' interviews last night, they were shouting commands the whole time. Part of that shouting of commands is not just to get Mr. Mack's attention, but it's also to let everybody in the close proximity know something is going on here. Be aware.
Chief, not to be critical in any way, Monday
But-
morning quarterbacking,
But
was there thought to trying to pit maneuver or stop this guy before he got in front of Music Hall and or firing the non-lethal rounds before he got in front of Music Hall when he got out of his car?
Yeah.
Or was it just not logistically possible?
Yeah, so a couple things on that. One is we do not train on pit maneuvers. That's just not something that's good for us in this city. We do use stop sticks. Part of the investigation is still ongoing. Obviously, I know there was an officer who attempted stop sticks. We're still looking at, is that why the vehicle stopped at 12th and Elm? Did the stop sticks work? And the tires caused it to become disabled. So we're still looking into all of that. But yeah, the officers use whatever tools they have available to them at that moment.
It also seemed that when I listened to the police scanner traffic, that officers were having, I don't know if trouble is the right word, but they were attempting very hard to get non-lethal forms of ordnance as soon as possible. It sounded like they might have been having some trouble getting it there. Apparently they got it there.
Yeah, that sergeant was there very quickly. He works just right across the street at District 1, so it was there quickly. Every sworn officer carries a firearm, obviously. Many of them carry patrol rifles, but not every single sworn officer has a non-lethal weapon at their disposal, and there is reason for that. There are strategies behind that for us. But the ones who have it the one who had it was able to get there. And additional reason, I don't know if you heard in part of the video, you hear them calling for all on-duty SWAT personnel to come down there. They also bring additional resources, additional tools, but this resolved itself prior to their arrival.
Chief, one thing that I think is important to make clear, I know you explained the process. I know you explained your officers tried everything they could to use non-lethal force and whatnot, but I feel like there is still a part of the population who might look at any kind of officer shooting and say, why couldn't they have shot him in the leg with the bullets? Why couldn't they have done this? If you can explain that protocol, I understand officers are trained in those situations. When an arm goes up with a firearm, you do not freeze up. You're trained to eliminate the threat.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, and I understand why people ask that question. I truly do understand. But the way an officer is trained, stop the threat. Stop the threat. Shooting somebody in a hand or in a foot is likely not going to stop the threat. Unfortunately, that's where they have to make a decision. What do I need to do to stop this threat now? And that is a decision that they have made.
Chief, you spoke with the family of the deceased. Can you give any indication as to what they said, what their reaction was?
Yeah, I'm not going to share what our conversation was. I will tell you, you can only imagine, that's a lot to take in, to find out your loved one has passed, to find out how they passed, and then to come in and watch it on video. I strongly believe that's the best thing to do prior to having a press conference. I don't want the family or the officers to, the first time they see the video is when they turn the local news on. So it's important to get them in here early and let them have the option to see the video or not. But behind you.
Can you speak to the amount of officers who were pursuing Mr. Mack, after that initial encounter with him, and why there was such a heavy police presence outside of Music Hall? Was that simply because it was a heavily populated area? Was there, an event going on, things like that?
Yeah, so I don't have a lot of detail on the answer to that, but I can tell you the officers already knew that he had stabbed a woman. He was trying to kill this woman. So they knew that. They knew they had to stop him. Then once they engage in a vehicle pursuit, he points a firearm at the officers that are pursuing him. Heightens that sense of emergency even more. Once they get downtown, anytime you get into the downtown, OTR, heavily populated areas, there's even a heightened sense of emergency to stop this threat. Many, many lives were in danger. So I don't have a number for you of how many officers were there. You also have officers that work in off-duty details at Music Hall, Washington Park, the PVO that I mentioned. We want these officers out there. The city administration has been gracious enough to give us funding to make sure we have the cops in the right places at the right time. And this is indicative of that.
What do we know about how this whole thing started in that initial incident and what the relationship is between Mr. Mack and his woman?
Yeah, so some of that is still under investigation. All the officers knew was what that 911 call relayed to us initially. That's how this whole thing got started. They didn't have anything prior to that. That's what they were acting on.
What is the relationship, or do you guys know yet, between Mr. Mack and his woman?
Yeah, I know they are not strangers. I'll just say that.
Do you have an age on her?
I'm not sure. I know she's younger than him. That's all I know. Sorry. I don't have any.
Indication as to a background on your suspect? In other words, does he have a rap sheet? Do you have any details on that, and also any kind of mental history?
Yeah. So I would be speculating to comment on his mental status, but what normal person acts like this, I don't know. So, but as far as he does have a criminal record here locally, I did not get into the details exactly of what that is.
Do you know where he's from?
He lives here in Cincinnati. I don't know if he's brought up, born and raised here.
Or anything right now?
I don't have the answer to that.
I just wanted to go back to the police presence. Obviously, we saw so many units out there yesterday. You think about your current state, down more than 100 officers. When something like this happens, it is all hands on deck. You are seeing pretty much all of District 1 and help out responding to that. Where does that leave you as far as covering this city and maybe being forced to ask for help from surrounding districts to cover other hot spots in the city? Where does that leave you?
Yeah, so we typically don't ask others for help. Typically others ask us for help, which I'm proud to do when we can. But you're right, there were a lot of cops there because this started on the west side of Cincinnati, traveled through District 3, ended in District 1. So you have many different districts involved. And part of the investigation is, once it comes to a resolution, we need to hold on to those officers in a space so they can all be interviewed by our homicide investigators. So once this resolved, they do not get sent back to their unit of assignment until after they've been interviewed. All right?
Speak to the councilperson real quick. Do you mind stepping in front of the podium? So watching this, obviously you were a policeman. What are your thoughts?
It's a horrible, tragic situation. Tactically, as the chief said, the officers did everything possible they could do to try to preserve life. The use of the 40 millimeter rounds is evidence that the result in using your firearm was the last resort. So it's still under investigation, but based on what the chief has said, based on what I've seen, tactically the police did everything they could, and the fact of trying to preserve life, the 40 millimeter rounds 3 times, discharging 40 millimeter rounds, trying to prevent using deadly force, I think that tells the story right there.
And Ms. Rowley, do you mind? mind answering a question?
Mr. Question.
The question up at the podium would be what your thoughts are coming from your position at the city. If you wouldn't mind standing at the podium, it'd be very helpful.
I think they've said it.
That's it for today. This last question. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Good.